Have you made up your mind on what you'd like to do for as far as action?
I sort of made up my mind, too. I mean, I can't tell you what it would be, but I sort of made it.
President Trump puts Venezuela on notice as the Pentagon launches Operation Southern Spear. This is now a named operation to target narco-terrorist networks across Latin America. Let's break it all down here at the Wall. About 25% of all deployed U.S. warships are now in the Caribbean with the arrival of USS Gerald Ford, the newest and largest warship in the U.S. Navy's inventory, joined by dozens of other warships, including guided missile destroyers, have a few guided missile cruisers in there, Lake Erie, USS Iwo Jima, an amphibious assault ship, of course, loaded out with 2,000 Marines in full combat load, all taking place, of course, just here off the coast of Venezuela. And don't forget, we have B-52 bombers from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. We have fifth-generation F-35 fighter jets in Roosevelt Roads, Puerto Rico over here. That's an old Navy base that was been shuttered for many years, now back. And, of course, all this to combat the narco-terrorists that have been smuggling drugs across the Caribbean. And there's been 20 strikes against these suspected drug smuggling vessels, killing dozens. And right here, you also see the oilers have arrived here as well. Of course, when the USS Gerald Ford arrives, it's the newest aircraft carrier. You have to refuel that. Of course, it has two nuclear power plants on board that aircraft carrier, but you have to refuel the jet aircraft. And in addition to the bombers, of course, you have the Marines, you have the F-35s. We talked about that in Puerto Rico. Again, about a quarter of all U.S. Navy warships deployed in the world right now are here off the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean, ready for any potential orders from the commander-in-chief to strike. And with that, let's bring in our guest, Rebeccah Heinrichs, a Hudson Institute Senior Fellow and Foreign Policy Expert, no stranger to the program. Good morning, Rebeccah.
Good morning, Lucas. Good to see you.
Do you think regime change is possible in Venezuela? Something we've heard many questions asked to President Trump.
Well, I think that President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been pretty clear that this is really to pressure the regime to stop sending drugs, that the Maduro regime is a narco-terrorist organization. It allows its territory to be used for the shipment of drugs, trafficking. And so that is the primary reason that has been given. But as you point out, Lucas, that's a lot of firepower in the region. And so I think really it's an enormous effort to pressure Maduro to stop this narco-terrorism. But also, I think it also is to perhaps incentivize some of the military around Maduro, potentially to pressure Maduro to leave, to maybe encourage Maduro to leave on his own. I'm very skeptical that he will. I'm also very skeptical, Lucas, that the United States is going to go forward with what would amount to the necessary force needed for regime change to something more peaceful in the region.
One of the things we talked about with all these warships in the Ford strike group, of course, the guided missile destroyers and some of the cruisers that are out there, of course, they're armed with dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles. If President Trump were to order some kind of strikes on Venezuela, what would the target set look like, Rebeccah? And should force be necessary, would you be recommending strikes against the Maduro regime inside Venezuela?
Well, President Trump's administration has been really pretty close, keeping its cards close to its vest about what some of the intelligence they have and what they're actually looking at inside Venezuela. So I wouldn't be able to give advice, but I would say that if there are strikes, I would speculate that those strikes would be against the cartels, drugs specifically, not targets that would threaten the Maduro regime proper. The reason for that, Lucas, is that the Maduro regime is obviously militarily inferior to the United States, but it's also backed by the Russians and the Chinese and the Cubans. And we learned this back in 2019 when the Russians sent forces into Venezuela to kind of back Maduro and to intimidate the United States. So I think it would be a mess for the United States to get involved in regime change specifically because it would take a lot of U.S. power to get opposition forces that we want, the pro-democracy people in power in Venezuela. So I think this is more intimidation, Lucas, and then also the strikes would be against the cartel organizations and the cocaine operations that is ongoing in Venezuela.
And one of the assets not listed on the board, of course, are Reaper drones. That's what's been carrying out the vast majority of those strikes on those drug boats. Let's look ahead, Rebeccah, to this week when President Trump hosts the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. What are you looking to come out of these meetings?
Well, obviously, the big goal here would be is if you had progress towards Saudi normalization with Israel, adding the Saudi government to the Abraham Accords.
How likely is that to happen?
I think it's still not yet. I think it's still probably premature, but that's always the goal because of Saudi Arabia's significance in the Muslim world. Obviously, it's the home of Medina and Mecca, key holy sites for the Islamic community. And so to have that progress would be massive for greater stabilization in the Middle East. I think that this is going to be more United States collaborating with the Saudis militarily, greater integration, the weapon sales from the United States going to Saudi Arabia. And all of that would be good because we don't want the Saudis to be buying weapons from the Chinese. So we want to pull the Saudis more into our corner.
Quick yes or no, Rebecca, to put you on the spot. Should F-35 stealth fighter jets be sold to the Saudis?
I think it would be okay as long as the Israelis do not oppose. And the Israeli government said as long as normalization comes first, they would be comfortable with that sale.
Well, thank you, Rebeccah Heinrichs. Appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, Lucas.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.